First time I saw my ship on an alien news feed, I laughed. Not a proud laugh, not a vindictive laugh. The kind of laugh that comes out of you when the universe folds a piece of paper and shows you a shape you weren't ready to see. I was sitting in bay control at Helios dry dock, eating reheated noodles from a thermos lid, watching a Bravari commercial signal that one of our comms techs had been pirating for 6 months because he liked their serialized dramas. The dramas were terrible. Every episode ended with someone making a speech about lineage, but the signal was clean, and it kept morale up during third shift. The drama cut out mid-scene, replaced by a tone I'd never heard before. 3 rising notes, then silence, then a voice speaking formal Bravari so fast our translation software lagged by 11 seconds. When the translation caught up, the words on my screen were, "Emergency intelligence reclassification. Terran naval vessel. Designate unknown. All strategic commands acknowledge." And then they showed her. They showed the Meridian. My ship. Hull number TCV7. Built over 31 months in a dock I was sitting inside at that exact moment. Noodles going cold in my lap. She'd left the yard 9 weeks earlier. I'd watched her go. I'd stood on the observation platform and felt that specific emptiness you feel when something you built with your hands is no longer yours. And I'd gone back to work because there were 6 more keels waiting. On the Bravari broadcast, the Meridian was captured in long-range passive imaging, the kind you take when you don't want the subject to know you're looking. She was crossing what I'd later learn was the Tannhauser Shear, a region of compressed interstellar medium near the boundary of Bravari core space and the contested Helian Straits. Routine patrol. Nothing special from our end. From their end, apparently, everything special. The broadcast showed the Meridian for 47 seconds. No narration during that window. Just the ship, turning slowly in enhanced imaging, while numbers and symbols cascaded down the margins in a Bravari technical notation I couldn't read. Then the voice came back, and the translation software delivered this. Structural analysis indicates a vessel massing between 2.1 and 2.4 million tons, with an armor profile inconsistent with known Terran industrial output. Drive signature does not match any cataloged human propulsion system. Weapons hardpoints exceed theoretical maximum for a civilization at Terran Development Index. This vessel should not exist. I set my noodles down. Intelligence Directorate has reclassified the Terran Confederation from monitoring tier to active strategic concern. All frontier commands are directed to treat Terran vessels as priority tracking targets effective immediately. My name is Marin Solgaard. I am a naval architect. I have been building warships for the Terran Confederation since I was 24 years old, and I am 41 now, and I need to tell this story the way it actually happened, because the version you've heard, the one where we were geniuses, the one where we outsmarted the galaxy, the one where the empires panicked and we stood tall, that version makes us sound like we knew what we were doing. We didn't. I did not build the Meridian to scare anyone. I built her to survive. The difference between those two things is the entire story. Let me tell you how we build ships, because that's where the confusion starts. Not for us, for them. Helios dry dock sits in a stable Lagrange pocket between 2 gas giants in the Captain system, which is a red dwarf about 13 light-years from Sol. There's nothing special about Captain. It's cold, it's dim. The habitable zone is a joke, and the only reason we're there is because the gravitational environment is stable enough to hold a construction frame in place without active correction. We picked Captain because it was cheap and boring. The Bravari overlooked it for the same reasons. I came to Helios as a junior structural engineer 11 years before the Meridian broadcast. Back then we were building corvettes, small, fast, ugly, functional. The kind of ship that exists because a civilization knows it's behind and needs numbers more than elegance. I didn't design those corvettes. I reinforced their internal framing, ran stress simulations, and argued with senior engineers about weld tolerances that differed by fractions of a millimeter. It was detail work, invisible work, the kind of work that doesn't show up in the finished product unless it fails. I loved it. Here's the thing you need to understand about Terran shipbuilding, the thing the Bravari couldn't parse and the Dominion couldn't model, and the Keth Sarai eventually had to send an actual delegation to verify because they didn't believe the intelligence reports. We don't build from doctrine, we build from failure. Every species in the known galaxy with interstellar capability builds warships according to a theoretical model. The Brevari use something called optimal threat geometry. They calculate the most likely engagement profile, design the ideal ship for that profile, and then build it. The Rithkai Dominion uses industrial scaling. They identify the largest vessel their production infrastructure can sustain and then maximize firepower within that envelope. The Kethsirai use distributed lethality swarms of identical units coordinated by a central intelligence. All three approaches work. All three have centuries of validated performance behind them. All three begin with the same assumption, that you can predict what the ship will face and design accordingly. We don't assume that. We assume the ship will face something we didn't predict, something we've never seen, something that exploits exactly the weakness we thought was acceptable. We assume this because it keeps happening. Not in space, we haven't fought a major fleet engagement yet, and when I built the Meridian, we'd never fired a weapon in anger against another civilization's warship. We assume it because of Earth. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, reactor failures, bridge collapses, the Titanic, the Challenger, Chernobyl, Deepwater Horizon, Tacoma Narrows. We have a species-long catalog of engineered systems that met the one condition they were never designed for and disintegrated. So we build for the thing we can't imagine. Our structural tolerances are, by galactic standards, obscene. Not because we're better engineers, because we're more frightened engineers. Every Terran warship carries between 30 and 40% more structural mass than an equivalent Brevari design would consider rational. Our armor isn't thicker because we wanted to intimidate anyone. It's thicker because I sat in a simulation lab for 9 weeks, modeling what happens to a hull under simultaneous thermal shock and kinetic impact at angles that the tactical manuals say are improbable. And the results gave me nightmares, and I added more armor. The Meridian's keel took 4 months longer than scheduled because I halted production twice to rerun load-bearing calculations after our metallurgy team changed the alloy composition of the lateral bracing by 6%. 6%. On a ship that masses over 2 million tons, 6% of the lateral bracing alloy is a rounding error to the Brevari. To me, it was 6 weeks of lost sleep and a formal review I had to present to the Admiralty explaining why we were behind. I stood in front of Vice Admiral Chandra Kose in a conference room on Helios Station and told her honestly that I had stopped building her warship because I was not satisfied that the 37th ring frame would maintain integrity under a loading condition that had a 0.003% probability of occurring. She stared at me for a long time. Then she said, "Fix it." That's Yard doctrine. The Brevari saw the Meridian and registered her mass, her armor depth, her redundant structural members, her oversized reactor housing, her weapons hardpoints that sat deeper inside the hull than any rational design philosophy would place them. They ran her profile through their models, and the models told them, this ship was built by a civilization that has fought and lost a major fleet engagement and integrated the lessons learned. We hadn't. We'd just been scared of the ocean for 10,000 years, and we'd gotten very, very good at building things that don't sink. The Brevari broadcast reached Confederate naval intelligence 14 hours after I saw it on a pirated drama feed. By that time, I'd already sent an informal message to my department head, Yuki Tanaka, which read, "We're on Brevari television. It's not a comedy." Yuki's response, which arrived 30 minutes later, was a single word: explain. I explained. Then I waited. Then the formal communications started arriving, and they didn't stop for 3 months. The Brevari Strategic Intelligence Directorate had, in a single broadcast, reclassified the entire Terran Confederation from what they called a nascent monitoring tier polity to an active strategic concern. In practical terms, this meant they believed we had jumped 2 full development tiers in the time between their last assessment and the Meridian's appearance. Their last assessment had been 8 years prior, based on the corvettes we were building at the time. 8 years, from corvettes to the Meridian. In Brevari developmental models, that kind of leap takes between 60 and 150 years. They knew our models. They had intelligence on our industrial base. They had signal intercepts, trade pattern analysis, resource flow projections. Everything in their data said we should still be building corvettes. And then the Meridian crossed the Tannhauser Shear, and their deep space monitoring array caught her, and their models broke. Here is where the panic started. Not because the Meridian was powerful, though she was. Not because she was unexpected, though she was. The panic started because the Bravari couldn't explain her. The Bravari are not a fearful species. Their empire spans 1,100 inhabited systems. Their fleet is the second largest in the known galaxy. They have fought and won 6 major interstellar wars over the past 4,000 years. They do not panic because a new ship appears on their sensors. They panic when their models fail, because Bravari civilization is built on the principle that reality is predictable if you have enough data, and a model failure of this magnitude meant one of two things. Either their intelligence on human capability was catastrophically wrong, which implied a security breach at the deepest level, or humans had done something that shouldn't be possible within known physics and material science. Neither option was comforting. The broadcast I saw was a domestic intelligence alert, the Bravari equivalent of a classified briefing that had been pushed to military channels and accidentally caught by civilian signal infrastructure. Within days, it wasn't accidental anymore. The Rithkai Dominion's intelligence service picked up the reclassification. So did the Keth Sarai Collective. So did the Valeth Accord, who we'd barely had contact with. So did the Outer Threshold Compact, who we hadn't had contact with at all. Within a standard month, the Meridian was the most analyzed warship in galactic history, and no one had spoken to us about her. That's the part that scared me. Not the analysis, the silence. 5 major interstellar powers were staring at a ship I'd built, running models, reclassifying threat indices, repositioning fleet assets, and not one of them sent us a message asking what she was. In my experience, when people stop asking questions, it's because they've already decided on the answers. The Keth Sarai broke the silence. They did it the Keth Sarai way, without warning, without protocol, and without particularly caring whether we were ready. A Keth Sarai courier ship appeared at the edge of the Sol system, transmitted a formal request for technical dialogue regarding Terran naval architecture, and then waited. It didn't advance. It didn't repeat the message. It just sat at the heliopause and waited for someone to answer. I was on Helios when the notification came through. I was in the middle of a keel laying ceremony for TCV-12, which didn't have a name yet, and which I was privately calling stubbornness because the design review process had taken 11 months. An aide handed me a tablet with a priority flag from Naval Intelligence. I read it again. Then I called Yuki. "They want to see the yard," I said. "Absolutely not," Yuki said. "The request came through diplomatic channels. The foreign ministry is already involved." "Marin, they want to see how we build ships. That is the single most sensitive piece of strategic information we possess." "I know." "Then why are you calling me instead of telling them no?" "Because 5 empires are staring at us and none of them understand what they're looking at. And that is more dangerous than anything we've ever built." There was a long silence on the channel. I could hear Yuki breathing. She was in her office on Luna, 9 light hours away, and the signal delay had been compressed by the relay network to under a second, and I could hear her thinking. "You want to show them," she said. "I want to show one of them, the one who asked. That's not your decision." "No, but I'm telling you it should be." Yuki is not a woman who changes her mind easily. She is a woman who changes her mind precisely when presented with sufficient reason, and then commits to the new position with the same ferocity she held the old one. 2 days later, I received orders to prepare a restricted access tour of Helios Dry Dock for a Keth Sarai technical delegation of no more than 8 individuals. I had 6 days to prepare. I spent the first 2 days arguing with Naval Intelligence about what could be shown and what had to be hidden. I spent the 3rd day arguing with the yard foreman about safety protocols for non-human visitors. I spent the 4th day realizing that the Keth Sarai breathe a nitrogen-argon mix and our station atmosphere would slowly poison them, and requisitioning emergency environmental suits from a supply depot that didn't have any, and fabricating them from modified EVA gear that our machine shop built in 19 hours straight. I spent the 5th day standing in the observation gallery above Bay 7, looking down at the skeleton of TCV-12, her keel laid, her first ring frames rising like the ribs of a metal cathedral, and trying to figure out how to explain what she was to a species that had been building warships since before humans discovered algebra. I didn't sleep on the 6th day. The Keth Sarai arrived on a shuttle that docked at our auxiliary port with the kind of precision that made our docking officers go quiet. 8 individuals, taller than me, and I'm 184. Bilateral symmetry, bipedal, 4. I am here to determine the nature of that breakthrough. There wasn't one, I said. Her skin shifted slightly bluer. Interest, I'd later learn. The vessel exceeds your civilization's known industrial capacity by a factor of 3. It exceeds your model of our industrial capacity by a factor of 3. She regarded me for a moment. Then she said, "Show me." I showed her. I walked Sarathikin through Bay 7 for 9 hours. Not the whole dock, just Bay 7. Just the skeleton of TCV-12. Just the keel and the first 16 ring frames and the lateral bracing that connected them, and the internal bulkhead framework that was beginning to take shape inside the hull like a second skeleton within the first. Sarate didn't ask about weapons. She didn't ask about propulsion. She didn't ask about armor composition or shield harmonics or any of the things the Bravari intelligence analysts were presumably losing sleep over. She asked about the ring frames. Specifically, she asked why there were so many of them. "Your vessel in the Tannhauser Shear," she said, standing on the scaffolding beside the 11th ring frame of TCV-12, one hand resting on the metal. The frame rose above us, 20 meters to the next gantry level, curving inward toward the dorsal spine. Our analysis indicates 44 primary ring frames over a hull length of 1.7 kilometers. 46, I said. The standard for a vessel of that displacement in Keth Sarai design philosophy is 19. I know. Bravari doctrine would specify 22. I know that too. She looked at me. Her skin was cycling between blue and a deeper gray I hadn't seen before. Why 46? This was the moment. This was the question the entire delegation had been built around. The question 5 empires were circling. The question that had reclassified us from a curiosity to a threat. And the answer was so simple that I understood, standing there on the scaffolding, why no one had been able to figure it out. Because I wasn't sure 38 was enough. Sorate was still, all 4 hands motionless. I ran the simulations at 38, I said. Standard frames, standard spacing, adjusted for our alloy properties. 38 gave me a 99.2% confidence interval across all modeled combat loading conditions. I paused, so I started modeling the conditions I hadn't modeled. That is a recursive problem, Sarate said. You cannot model what you have not imagined. No, but I can model adjacent failures. I can take every modeled condition and ask what happens if it co-occurs with another modeled condition that was evaluated independently. Thermal shock during lateral acceleration, kinetic impact during reactor oscillation, hull breach concurrent with internal detonation. None of those combinations were in the standard threat library because they're individually unlikely and concurrently nearly impossible. And you designed for them. I designed for 1,200 of them. The 46 frames aren't the answer to any single threat. They're the cumulative answer to every nightmare I could generate by combining threats that had no business occurring together. Sorate removed her hand from the ring frame. She looked up at it. She looked at me. Her skin was a color I hadn't cataloged yet. Something between blue and a luminous pale that I would later learn indicated not just interest, but something closer to professional vertigo. Architect Solgard, she said. In Keth Sarai design philosophy, we determine the threat environment first and then build the minimum structure to survive it. This produces an efficient vessel optimized for its operational context. Yes. Your philosophy is different. Yes. You do not design for the threat you expect. No. You design for the threat you fear. I hadn't heard it put that way before. I stood on that scaffolding and felt the sentence land inside me and settle into a place that had been waiting for it. Yes, I said. That's exactly what we do. She was quiet for a long time. Below us, the yard workers were running conduit through the lower frame junctions, their welding torches throwing brief blue-white light against the hull plates. TCV-12's skeleton gleamed in that intermittent light like something alive, something breathing. How many ships like the one in the Tannhauser Shear have you built? Sarate asked. 7 completed, 6 more in various stages of construction. In 31 months. In 31 months. This is what my government cannot reconcile. 7 capital-weight warships in 31 months from a civilization with your industrial base is not merely impressive. It is, according to our models, physically impossible. Your models assume we build the way you build, I said, top down. Design finalized, then fabricated according to specification. We don't do that. Explain. So I explained. And this was the part I hadn't been sure naval intelligence would let me share. And the part Yuki had ultimately approved, because she understood the same thing I did, that the mystery was more dangerous than the truth. We build iteratively, I said. The Meridian, the ship your government is concerned about, was not designed as a single integrated blueprint. She evolved. Her keel was laid based on a design that was 60% complete. As construction progressed, we modified the design in real time based on testing, simulation, material availability, and lessons from the other hulls under construction simultaneously. Ring frame 39 was added because TCV-3 experienced a resonance anomaly during structural testing that we'd never predicted, and we patented a fix and applied it retroactively to every hull in production. You modify the design during construction, Sarada said. She said it the way you'd say you perform surgery during an earthquake, continuously. This would be unacceptable in any Kethsarai shipyard. The tolerances are maintained by the workforce. Every welder, every fabricator, every structural technician on this dock is trained to work within tolerances that accommodate design evolution. They're not following a fixed plan. They're following a living one. How do you maintain coherence? We argue, I said. Constantly, about everything. The senior engineers argue with the junior engineers. The junior engineers argue with the fabricators. The fabricators argue with the metallurgists. The metallurgists argue with me. I argue with the Admiralty. The arguments are the quality control. If someone thinks a change is wrong, they stop the line until it's resolved. Anyone can stop the line. The newest apprentice on this dock has the authority to halt a multi-billion credit warship because a weld doesn't look right to them. Anyone, Sarata repeated. Anyone. Her skin was fully pale now, luminous. I didn't know what it meant at the time. I learned later it meant she was reassessing something at the foundational level, not a fact, not a datum, but a category. Your ships are not designed, she said slowly. They are grown. I looked at TCV-12's ribs rising around us, the workers moving through them like blood through capillaries, the constant percussion of construction echoing through the bay. I thought about the Meridian, 9 weeks gone, carrying inside her hull every argument I'd won, and every argument I'd lost, and every midnight simulation that had kept me staring at a screen thinking, what if, what if, what if? Yes, I said. They're grown. Sarathakin's delegation stayed for 4 days. I showed them Bay 7 and Bay 3 and the metallurgy lab and the simulation center, where my team ran failure scenarios 18 hours a day. I did not show them Bay 1, where TCV-9 was being fitted with her weapons suite. I did not show them the reactor assembly hall. I did not show them the classified sections where things I don't discuss lived behind doors I didn't have clearance to open. They didn't ask. Sarate understood professional boundaries the way all shipwrights do. The way you understand a locked door on someone else's dock means this is mine, not yours, and you respect it because someday the situation will be reversed. What Sarada took back to the Kethsarai Collective was, as far as I can reconstruct from subsequent events, approximately this. The humans have not achieved a breakthrough. They have achieved a methodology. Their ships are not the product of superior technology. They are the product of a design philosophy that treats every vessel as an evolving organism rather than a fixed specification. The resulting ships are over-engineered by a factor that makes them appear to be products of a far more advanced civilization. They are not. They are products of a civilization that is institutionally afraid of the unknown and has converted that fear into a structural engineering discipline of extraordinary rigor. The humans can keep building these ships. There is no secret to steal, no technology to replicate, no single innovation to counter. The capability is distributed across their entire workforce and embedded in their institutional culture. It cannot be surgically removed. Recommendation: do not attempt to match them. Reclassify threat model from anomalous capability to divergent industrial culture. Engage diplomatically. The Kethsarai accepted Sarathi's recommendation. They sent a formal diplomatic note to the Terran Confederation proposing a bilateral naval architecture exchange program. It was, by galactic standards, an extraordinary gesture. the equivalent of one shipbuilder walking into another's yard and saying, "Teach me how you think." The Brevari did not accept Sarathe's recommendation because Sarathe's recommendation was not offered to them. The Kethsarai kept her report classified. What leaked to the Brevari was the conclusion that the Meridian was not the product of a breakthrough without the reasoning. And a conclusion without reasoning is worse than no information at all, because it invites the audience to supply their own. The Brevari supplied their own. Their analysis, which I obtained years later through a diplomatic exchange, concluded, the Kethsarai assessment that no breakthrough occurred is itself disinformation. The Kethsarai delegation was shown a curated environment designed to conceal the actual production methodology. Human industrial output at this scale requires either a concealed resource base, an undisclosed technological transfer from an unknown third party, or a breakthrough in automation or material science that the humans successfully hid from Kethsarai inspectors. The absence of evidence for any of these explanations is itself evidence that the concealment is effective. The absence of evidence is itself evidence. Read that again. The Brevari looked at the truth, decided it couldn't be the truth because it didn't fit their model, and concluded that the truth was a lie designed to conceal a deeper truth that happened to align with what their model predicted. They didn't update the model, they updated reality. This is how arms races start, not with aggression, with the inability to believe that someone else's answer could be that simple. I need to stop for a moment and tell you about Elena. Elena Vasquez was a structural fabricator on Bay 7. She'd come to Helios 4 years before the Meridian broadcast, transferred from a commercial shipyard in the Proxima system where she'd been building cargo haulers. She was quiet, precise, and she had a habit of humming while she worked that drove the people near her mildly insane until they realized she only hummed when the work was going well, and silence from Elena meant something was wrong. Elena was one of the people who stopped the line on TCV-12. It was 3 weeks after Sarathe's delegation left. I was in my office reviewing the Brevari analysis, which I shouldn't have had, but which Naval Intelligence had shared with me because they wanted my technical assessment when I received a flag from Bay 7. Line stop, ring frame 22. Fabricator, Vasquez E. I went down. Elena was standing on the scaffolding beside ring frame 22 with her welding rig powered down and her helmet pushed back, and a look on her face I knew. I knew it because I'd worn it. The look that says something is wrong and I can't prove it yet, but I am not moving until I can. Talk to me, I said. Grain structure, she said. The alloy in this section doesn't look right under magnification. I can't tell you what's wrong with it. It passed spectrographic analysis. It passed tensile testing. On paper, it's perfect. But I've been welding this alloy for 4 years and the grain looks different and I stopped. Different how? I don't know. Tighter, more uniform. Like it was processed differently. I looked at the section she'd flagged. To my eye, through the magnification scope she'd set up, it looked fine. Better than fine. The grain structure was clean, consistent, exactly what the specification called for. Elena, this looks like a textbook sample. That's what's wrong with it, she said. It's too clean. Production alloy doesn't look like this. Production alloy has variation. This looks like it came out of a lab. I stared at her. Then I called the metallurgy team. It took them 2 days to find it. The alloy batch Elena had flagged had been processed at a slightly higher temperature than standard within acceptable range, within tolerance, within specification. But the higher processing temperature had altered the grain structure in a way that made the alloy more brittle under exactly one condition: rapid thermal cycling during asymmetric loading. A condition that would never occur during normal structural testing. A condition that would only occur if the ship was hit on one side while simultaneously firing weapons on the other. A scenario I had cataloged as Nightmare Combination 847 and designed the 46 ring frames to survive. With the altered alloy, ring frame 22 would not have survived it. Not catastrophically, not immediately. But it would have developed a microfracture that would have propagated over time, invisibly, until a subsequent stress event completed the failure. The ship would have come apart at the 22nd ring under combat conditions that were improbable but possible, and the failure analysis would have blamed the design, and I would have spent the rest of my life wondering what I'd missed. Elena Vasquez, who had no engineering degree, who had never run a simulation, who had never read a tactical threat assessment, caught it because the metal didn't look right to her hands. This is what I couldn't show Sorate, not because it was classified, but because it's impossible to demonstrate. It's not a methodology, it's not a technology, it's the thing that lives in the space between a human being and the material they've worked with every day for 4 years. It's the reason we build the way we build. It's not fear. I was wrong when I told Sorate it was fear. It's intimacy. We know our ships the way you know a person you love, not from specifications and models, from touch, from sound, from the way the metal sings under the torch and the way the hull flexes under load, and the way a good weld looks different from a perfect weld and a perfect weld looks different from a real one. I recommended Elena for a commendation. She turned it down. She said she was just doing her job. She was, that's the point. The Bravari moved first, 3 months after Sorate's visit. They didn't move against us. That's important. They weren't preparing for war with the Terran Confederation. They were preparing for a possible future war with the Terran Confederation, which in Bravari strategic thinking is functionally the same thing but allows for diplomatic ambiguity. What they did was activate something called the Peripheral Denial Architecture, a network of automated weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and interdiction systems along their frontier, facing the contested regions where human and Bravari patrol routes overlapped. The platforms had existed for decades, dormant, maintained as a contingency. The Bravari activated them, upgraded their targeting parameters to include Terran hull signatures, and announced the activation as a routine modernization. No one believed it was routine. The Rithkai Dominion, who shared a border with both the Bravari and the Keth Sarai, in terrific intent to protect the people inside it, was generating an effect I had never modeled.
Move on.
My ships were too good, not too powerful, not too advanced, too resilient. The galaxy looked at them and saw warships that could survive conditions no one had designed for. And the logical conclusion, the Bravari conclusion, the Dominion conclusion, the conclusion of every strategic model that began with the assumption that ships are built to fight, was that we had built them to survive something specific, something we knew about and they didn't, something that justified this level of engineering. They thought we were preparing for a war we expected to be catastrophic, a war we were building to endure, not to win. And if the humans were building survival ships, the logical question was, what are they expecting to survive? The answer was everything. The answer was nothing. The answer was that we don't build for specific threats because we've learned that specific threats are the ones you're ready for. And the thing that kills you is always the thing you didn't expect, and the only rational response is to build for the irrational. But try explaining that to a civilization that has predicted the outcome of every war it has fought for 4,000 years. The models were breaking, and the Bravari, who worshipped their models the way we worship our instincts, could not let them break. So they reinforced the models instead. They doubled down. They assumed the intelligence failure was deeper than it appeared, the human capability greater than observed, the threat more existential than they'd estimated. My ship was becoming a mirror. Every empire that looked at her saw their own deepest fear reflected back, distorted by their own assumptions, amplified by their own inability to ask the simple question, what if they're just scared, like us? The crisis peaked and then didn't. That's the shape of it. It peaked and held and became something else entirely, something I don't think anyone predicted, and the pivot came from a place I did not expect. The Rithkai Dominion sent a message, not to us, not to the Bravari, to everyone. An open broadcast on the common diplomatic frequency, unencrypted, in 7 languages, including a rough but functional English that someone on their diplomatic staff had clearly been studying. The message was 12 words long. Why are the humans not moving their ships? We do not understand. That's it. 12 words. The most honest diplomatic communication I've ever encountered. Not a demand, not a threat, not a carefully worded note with 17 layers of implied meaning. A question. From a military empire with 60,000 warships, broadcast on an open channel, admitting confusion. Because they were right. We weren't moving our ships. The Meridian was still on routine patrol. TCV-2 through TCV-6 were on standard deployments. TCV-8 was in refit. None of them had changed course, altered alert status, or deviated from their published patrol routes. The Bravari had activated a weapons network. The Dominion had moved a strike group. The Keth Sarai had repositioned monitoring assets. The Veilith had recalled their frontier ambassador for consultation. We had done nothing. We had done nothing because, from our perspective, nothing had happened. The Meridian was doing her job. The Bravari broadcast had been noted, analyzed, and filed. The diplomatic implications were being managed through normal channels. No one in the Terran Confederation's military command structure had issued an alert because no one had threatened us, and we don't mobilize against hypothetical threats. We build against them. We don't fight against them. There's a difference. The Rithkai message hung in the diplomatic space for 3 days. No one responded to it officially, but I was later told by someone who was in the room that when the Bravari Strategic Council reviewed the Rithkai broadcast, the senior intelligence analyst of Bravari named Korath Vel, who had spent 40 years modeling alien military behavior, said something that changed the conversation. He said, "They are not moving because they do not believe they need to. Their ships are already designed for anything we can do. Mobilization is a statement of unreadiness. They have nothing to state." And then, according to my source, he said, "We have been reclassifying them as a threat based on the assumption that they are preparing for war. But their behavior is not consistent with war preparation. It is consistent with engineering completion. They are not getting ready for something. They are finished getting ready. They have been finished for some time. And they are not impressed with what we are doing because they built for this too." There was a silence in the room. "We are inside their margin," Korath Vel said. "Everything we have done, the platforms, the repositioning, the threat assessments, all of it falls within the envelope they already designed for. We are not a new problem to them. We are nightmare scenario number something, and they have already added the ring frames." I didn't learn this until years later. When I did, I sat alone in my office on Helios and I cried because Korath Vel, a Bravari intelligence analyst I would never meet, understood my ships better than almost anyone in my own civilization. We are inside their margin. Yes, that's it. That's the whole thing. The de-escalation was slow and ugly, and it didn't look like peace because it wasn't. It looked like 5 empires gradually, reluctantly, with enormous institutional resistance, updating their models. The Keth Sarai released Sorathe's full report to the other powers. This was controversial within the collective and resulted in a political crisis I won't detail here. The Bravari received the report and spent 6 weeks attacking its methodology before their own analysts confirmed its core finding. No breakthrough, no secret technology, no hidden benefactor, just humans building the way humans build. The Dominion retracted their strike group. The Bravari deactivated, not removed, deactivated the peripheral denial architecture targeting updates for Terran signatures. The Veilith sent their ambassador back, and the Rithkai, still operating on the principle that asking honest questions was better than assuming dishonest answers, sent a second message. This one was addressed directly to us. It said, "We would like to see how you build, not what you build, how. Will you show us?" Another delegation, another tour. This time I was ready. I showed the Rithkai delegation of 4 officers, 2 engineers, 1 individual whose role was never explained to me, the same things I'd shown Sorathe. Bay 7, the ring frames, the iterative design process, the simulation lab, the arguments, the line stops, the living plan. The Rithkai lead engineer, a massive individual named Toreth, whose species communicated partially through subsonic vibration I could feel in my chest, watched Elena Vasquez work for 3 hours without speaking. He stood on the scaffolding and watched her weld ring frame 31 of TCV-12 with a focus so intense that Elena later told me she forgot he was there. When she finished a section and paused to inspect her work, Toreth spoke for the first time. "She changed the angle," he said through his translator. "Twice, in the middle of the weld, without stopping." "Yes," I said. Why?" The metal told her to. The grain was running slightly off axis from what she expected. If she'd maintained the original angle, the weld would have passed inspection, but it wouldn't have been as good. How did she know? She's been welding this alloy for 4 years. That is not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Toreth looked at me. The subsonic vibration in my chest changed deeper, more complex. I didn't know what it meant. His translator was silent. Whatever he was communicating, it wasn't in words. Then he said, "Among my people there is a concept. We call it vreth soul. It means the knowing that lives in the body after the mind has forgotten the learning. Your species has a word for it." "Muscle memory," I said. "No," he said, "closer to what you call craft. But that word is too small. Vreth soul includes the material. The metal knows the welder as the welder knows the metal. They are in dialogue. This is why your ships are what they are." He turned back to watch Elena. "You do not build ships," he said. "You negotiate with them. The ship tells you what it needs, and you listen, and what you cannot hear with your instruments, you hear with your hands. This is why your models cannot be stolen. The model is the people." I stood on that scaffolding and felt something shift in me that hasn't shifted back. Not pride, though there was pride. Something deeper. Recognition. Torith, from a civilization that had nothing in common with ours, whose biology was different, whose history was different, whose technology was different, had looked at the way Elena Vasquez welded a piece of metal and seen the same thing I'd seen the first day I walked onto a construction bay at 24 years old, and watched a senior fabricator run her hand along a hull plate and say, "This one's going to be trouble," and be right. The model is the people. Let me tell you what I've learned now, 6 years after the broadcast, 6 years since I laughed at my noodles and the galaxy changed shape. The Meridian is still in service. She's been refitted twice. She has never fired her weapons at another vessel. She has, however, served as the flagship for 3 separate humanitarian operations: a radiation disaster in a Bravari colony system, a refugee crisis along the Keth Sarai frontier, and a deep space rescue of a Valeth research station that suffered a catastrophic reactor failure. In each case, the Meridian arrived, deployed aid, and performed under conditions that would have destroyed a ship designed only for combat. Because she wasn't designed only for combat. She was designed for everything that can go wrong. And it turns out that everything that can go wrong includes more than warfare. It includes fires and radiation leaks and hull breaches and atmospheric loss and 100 kinds of disaster that have nothing to do with weapons and everything to do with the universe being exactly as hostile as I always feared it was. The Bravari still don't trust us entirely. I don't blame them. Their models have been updated, not replaced, and somewhere in those models there's still a variable that represents the possibility that we're hiding something. We're not. But I can't prove a negative, and I've stopped trying. Some trust is built over decades, not demonstrations. The Keth Sarai exchange program is in its 4th year. Sorathe Kin spent 6 months at Helios. She watched us build TCV-14 from keel to launch. She argued with me about frame spacing for 3 straight days. It was the best 3 days of my professional life. When she left, she gave me a Keth Sarai engineering tool, a calibration instrument so precisely made that our metrology lab couldn't measure its tolerances because they exceeded our measurement capacity. It sits on my desk. I use it every day. The Rithkai sent an engineer to work in our metallurgy lab. A Rithkai? In our lab? If you'd told me that 7 years ago, I'd have assumed it was a prelude to espionage. It's not. His name is Dorath, and he and our chief metallurgist, Sarah Chen, have co-authored a paper on grain boundary manipulation that has been cited in every major shipbuilding publication in 3 civilizations. Elena Vasquez read the paper and told me it explained what she'd been feeling in the metal for years, but never had the language for. This is what the Meridian did. Not what I intended. Not what the Admiralty intended. Not what anyone intended. She crossed a piece of space at the wrong time and the right distance, and a camera caught her, and the galaxy looked at her and saw a threat they couldn't explain, and the explanation when it finally came turned out to be something no one was prepared for. Not a weapon, not a technology, not a strategy. A culture. A way of being with material that treats fear as information rather than weakness, that treats the people who touch the metal as essential components of the design, that treats the unknown not as an enemy to be predicted, but as a condition to be survived. The empires panicked because they couldn't model us. They couldn't model us because their models assumed that capability implies intent. If you can build a ship that survives everything, you must be planning for everything. And if you're planning for everything, you must know something everyone else doesn't. But we don't know something everyone else doesn't. We know something everyone else does, and most civilizations train themselves to forget that the universe is not obligated to be what you expect. And the only honest response to that knowledge, the only structural response, the only engineering response, The only human response is to build as if anything could happen. Not because you're brave, not because you're brilliant, because you've spent 10,000 years learning what happens when you assume the water is calm and the sky is clear and the foundation is solid. And it wasn't, and people died. And you wrote their names down and you carried those names into the next design, and you made the hull a little thicker, the frame a little stronger, the weld a little deeper. Not because you were preparing for war, because you were trying not to bury anyone else. TCV-12 launched last month, 28 months from keel to commissioning. She was christened the Elena Vasquez by the woman herself, who stood on the observation platform in a dress she clearly wasn't comfortable in, and cracked a bottle of champagne against 2 million tons of metal that she had touched every single day for over 2 years. She cried. I'd never seen Elena cry. She stood up there with champagne foam on her hands and tears on her face, and she said into the microphone that broadcast to the entire yard, "I know every centimeter of this ship. She knows me too. Take care of her." That was the commissioning speech. 17 words. No reference to strength or power or deterrence or strategic positioning. Just a woman telling the universe to be gentle with something she'd built. The Elena Vasquez departed Helios on her maiden patrol yesterday. I watched her go from the same platform where I'd watched the Meridian leave 2.5 years ago. She's bigger than the Meridian, more refined. 48 ring frames instead of 46 because TCV-11 showed us something during structural testing that made me add 2 more. I stood on that platform and felt the same emptiness. The ship is gone. The work continues. 6 more keels in the bays, waiting for hands, waiting for arguments, waiting for someone to stop the line because something doesn't look right. I went back to work. Sarata sent me a message this morning. 3 words. Keth Sarai, don't waste language. Good keel, Marin. She'd seen the launch broadcast. She'd watched from 1,100 light years away, and she'd looked at TCV-12's hull. And she'd known the way I knew, the way Elena knew, the way Torith knew when he watched Elena weld, that this one was right. The Elena Vasquez is out there now, carrying inside her every nightmare I've ever had, and every lesson we've ever learned, and every argument we've ever fought, and every name we've ever carried. She's not the most powerful warship in the galaxy. She's not the most advanced. She's not the most elegant. She's the most honest. She is the exact shape of our fear, transmuted by 10,000 years of practice into the exact shape of our care. And the galaxy, which spent 2 years trying to figure out what she was built for, is slowly, so slowly beginning to understand the answer. She was built for everything, because we love the people inside.